Hi, my name is Colin from Connect the Watts, and today I want to discuss with you my perspective on whether Peloton is going to kill gyms. And by Peloton, what I really mean is all connected fitness. We're just using Peloton as, one of the big driving forces behind that. And by gyms, I mean all types of brick and mortar facilities, meaning big gyms, small fitness studios, yoga facilities. So my perspective that I want to share with you comes from me being deeply involved that brick and mortar gym experience over the past 13 years, and also my experience working with connected fitness and being deeply involved in how that is evolving. So I think I have a perspective that allows me to see how both industries have been affected by the past year of the pandemic, how they are interacting with each other, and how they are both evolving and how they're both going to kind of fare in this post-pandemic world that we're headed towards. So today I'm going to really dig into a lot of the details, a lot of the information, and I think what's going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months is going to be a very interesting and telling time for the fitness industry and just fitness as a whole. Before we start, make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you get all of our videos, whether it's connected fitness news, reviews, tips, or guides. So obviously when the pandemic started and traditional gyms or facilities were shut down in most areas, that is when connected fitness took a tremendous rise upwards because it was a forced adoption by pretty much anybody that wanted to stay in shape while they couldn't go to the gym. So we had a tremendous boost of interest and people trying out connected fitness for the very first time. And this really grew that industry by a tremendous amount. And we were going towards this direction anyway, but just think of the pandemic as like a fast forward loop in time by like 3 to 5 years. So there was a 3 to 5 year speed loop into adoption of the connected fitness movement. And this is why we have so many new companies just exploding and investing and developing so much towards this connected fitness space. But on the other side, we have the gym industry, the fitness studio industry. So obviously when everything was shut down, these places suffered tremendously. Some of the big gyms like 24 Hour Fitness and Gold's had to declare bankruptcy and close down some of their locations. Other gyms like smaller fitness studios closed down in huge numbers. I think it's estimated around 30 to 50% of individually owned fitness studios are going to be closed by the end of this year from the start of the pandemic. So there's been a huge consolidation of the brick and mortar fitness facilities, and the gyms, while they haven't closed at that rate yet, they're still in a bit of trouble. So I want to talk about each of them and about how they've been affected, where I see them going, and some of the changes that they are making to adapt to this new world. So let's start with what we traditionally know as gyms, meaning large facilities with tons of equipment that you can walk into and work out on your own, some of which might have classes, but that's not necessarily true for all. So there's different categories of gyms, and I think it's important to understand what these are, at least in my head. So there are high cost, medium cost, and low cost gym facilities. High cost would be like exclusive health clubs or Equinox. These I personally define at around $150 or more per month. And they offer more than just a gym, but a really good experience with multiple types of classes. And they don't rely on having huge amounts of memberships to make them functional because people pay a lot more and they actually go. Then we have the medium cost gyms. These are maybe around $50 to $100. And these are the ones that are suffering by far the most. These are like Gold's Gym, 24 Hour Fitness. These gyms are in a tough spot because they rely on having a quantity of people that is well beyond who will ever go to their gym. I think they rely almost like 80% of memberships never to really go into their facility. But the problem with that is that during the pandemic, everybody's memberships got frozen, or they just canceled them altogether. So it's going to take a long time to recoup a lot of those memberships. It's not that easy. They don't recoup them all every single year. They rely a lot on kind of that subscribe and forget model where people want to join the gym and they do, but then they quickly fall off, but they just continue paying. So they have a gym membership. But this is a big problem, obviously, when all of the memberships are canceled, or people now have that excuse of, now I'll just have an at-home fitness workout space that I never use. So that is the problem with that middle-sized gym, is that they're too expensive to really forget about, and they're too cheap to really run a profitable business if they have facilities that everybody wants to go to all the time. So they, I think, are in the toughest spots, and I think are going to kind of be squeezed out of the marketplace for the most part. I think you're going to see gyms get a lot more expensive with a lot more services, and you're going to see the opposite where like Planet Fitness go really, really cheap, but take away services. So then we have those low cost gyms like Planet Fitness, where you can sign up for just like $10 a month, stuff like that. They still require obviously a tremendous amount of volume, but it's a lot easier to get signups at $10 versus 50 or 100. And so it's easier for them to acquire volume, and they don't spend as much on extra stuff like those medium cost gyms do, that they end up being in a pretty good spot, and they end up taking a lot of market space from those medium cost gyms. So if anything, in terms of which gyms have the best chance to succeed, it's going to be the more expensive ones and the really cheap ones like Equinox and Planet Fitness, whereas the ones in the middle might have to adapt, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of diverge into either of those price points in the near future. These gyms are also fighting to create a hybrid system where you'll be able to both train in their facility and at home, because that's really looking like the model that has the best chance of surviving. So you're seeing a lot of news of these companies kind of working together with different connected fitness groups. Like, for example, Planet Fitness and iFit, I believe, have been kind of hand in hand in creating a membership experience for their members. And really any gym who doesn't do this is going to be seen as less valuable. And thus, I think that's going to become a very regular thing, that you'll get an at-home experience with your gym membership in almost all large-scale gyms soon. So how about the other type of gym? The smaller gym that you can still go to and do your own workout. I'm talking about things like Anytime Fitness or Crunch Fitness. How are those looking, and will those survive? Well, I think they're in a better spot because their overhead is very, very low. In fact, a lot of times they don't even have to pay an employee to be there. So they have very low cost, which means the chance of them surviving through this, I think, is pretty high, since a lot of people just aren't going to be able to get the equipment they want to do the workouts that they would like. And so I think you're going to see those do pretty well. It might take a little time for them to come back, but I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon. Then we have the smaller group class fitness models, and there are a lot of these. I'm gonna go over a few of these just as examples, because I think looking at these examples will give you some good insight about what these places will end up doing and which ones might not do so well. So the first one that's more near and dear to my heart, just because I used to own a CrossFit facility, is CrossFit. CrossFit owners obviously suffered tremendously during the shutdown, as did all gym owners, but I think CrossFit actually fared a bit better than some of the other ones I'll talk about soon. And this is because, well, CrossFit isn't perfectly optimized for profit, and so they don't really maximize their space. And so when there were space requirements for classes, it was a lot easier for them to adapt to than some of the other more bootcamp type models, where they are really centered about squeezing a lot of people into a small space. So CrossFit actually did a little bit better in that scenario. And the reason that CrossFit needs a little bit more space than some of these other smaller fitness studios is because of their equipment, like the barbell strength training, among other things that you'll be doing in a CrossFit gym. And for this reason, again, I think CrossFit gyms are going to do pretty well post-pandemic, at least the ones who survived, because there was a consolidation there. There was a lot that closed. And this is because of that equipment factor. Many people cannot afford or even have the space for the type of equipment that it would take to do CrossFit type training at home. And because of that, as well as the community factor a lot of these gyms are built around, they will probably bounce back pretty well. And you have to remember, CrossFit grew tremendously over the past 13, 14 years, and then they kind of stalled out in the past few, which really means that they've kind of settled with the people who really enjoy that type of training. And I think that'll just continue at the current rate. I don't see them growing a ton anytime soon, but the individual facilities might do better just because there's less of them. A lot of the gyms who weren't really doing well to begin with prior to the pandemic have sort of fallen off. But now let's talk about Orange Theory Fitness, because this movement was sort of built from CrossFit a little bit, but they obviously incorporated a lot of different things and have been growing tremendously. And part of what makes Orange Theory such a profitable business is because they were able to get rid of all the space requirements that came with CrossFit and all the intimidation that came with it. And they try to make it a lot more friendly, a lot more addictive, and be able to squeeze a lot more people in a tighter space so they could get more prominent locations that included higher rent. And because of this reason, they suffered tremendously during the pandemic, because even when you were allowed to have people in your facility, it was often with big space requirements. And in a model that requires 40 people per class in a relatively small area, that just doesn't work out too well. So you saw a lot of these Orange Theory gyms just kind of shut down for the most part for the entire pandemic. Some of them opened outdoor classes depending on the area, but they really did suffer quite a bit. But the problem with Orange Theory growing back to where they were after the introduction of connected fitness to so many people is that because they cut a lot of the complicated movements or a lot of the equipment that requires more space, well, a lot of that you can do at home. And when people tried out these classes, whether it was Peloton or other services, they might have realized, wow, maybe it's not 100% on par with what I could be doing at Orange Theory, but it's close enough, and it's cheaper, and it saves me time from traveling. And there's just a lot of beneficial factors from having that experience at home that there's no way that the same amount of interest will be in Orange Theory. I'm sure that they will grow back to some degree, but there will always be a certain percentage of people who found connected fitness and are going to prefer that and stay there for the long term. Now, there's another reason why I think Orange Theory Fitness is going to struggle a bit, and that'll make sense after I talk about Barry's Bootcamp. See, Barry's Bootcamp, I think, has a really good chance of making it, even though it has a lot of the same issues and problems as Orange Theory Fitness. But the one thing they do not have is an issue with having franchises. I think they might have a few franchises, but for the most part, the facilities are owned by the company, whereas Orange Theory Fitness relies almost entirely on the franchise model. And this can become problematic if you need to offer a hybrid experience, meaning if you want to go to Orange Theory and be able to have Orange Theory online classes, now those online classes have a pretty high cost to develop or partner with other developers for. So that will hurt the franchisees a lot to have that revenue slipped out. Whereas with Barry's Bootcamp, that's just part of their entire model, so they don't necessarily need to have as profitable a model for each individual location because they can kind of accumulate everything together as a whole. So I think that you will see that the larger fitness facility studios that are owned by the actual company might end out of the pandemic in a better spot than those under the franchise model. Finally, I want to talk about the other low equipment fitness facilities, and I'm talking about yoga, Pilates, cycling classes. These are the types of programs that can be easily replaced with at-home training with very, very little to no equipment. And so these are the ones that I would be absolutely worried about the most. And I know people are going to tell me in their comments that they love their yoga studio, they love the experience and the people, and that can't be replicated at home. And maybe that's true for you, but when you talk about how busy everybody is and you can save so much time and convenience by not traveling and by not having to go somewhere for a longer time if it's more condensed, I think you're going to see a big shift over in some of these classes to the at-home service. Obviously, cycling's a huge one, right? If you can afford a bike at your house rather than $100+ membership to somewhere else, even though the experience might not be quite the same, convenience always wins. So I really believe that yoga, Pilates, and cycling studios are in huge trouble. And I'm not saying all of them are going to close. That's not what's going to happen. But you will see on average more closures of these types of facilities relative to others. And I'm sure some others will do really well because they'll have less competition. But that's just the direction things are going. And this is obviously caused by the pandemic speeding up the timeline into people's foray into connected fitness, their experience with it, and basically the technological evolution to making that at-home connected fitness experience better and better. And it's just going to improve year after year. So these brick and mortar fitness facilities are going to have to step up. They're going to have to adjust, and some are going to survive, some are not. It's going to be very interesting, and I think you're going to see a lot come out over the next 6 to 12 months. A lot of these bigger facilities have been calling on Congress for stimulus. They want it bad. They want it as bad as the restaurants, and they're showing that the numbers for the gyms are not coming back, right? Restaurants are coming back. Gym members, not so much. It's going to be a much slower, much harder, and it's going to be a much rougher journey for a lot of these fitness gym facilities. That's my thoughts on how connected fitness and the pandemic has affected the brick and mortar gym facilities. But please let me know what you think about the future of gyms. Do you think Peloton and other connected fitness services are going to kill gyms entirely? Do you think there's going to be a radical shift in how those gyms operate? Let me know in comments. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.